Hello, my name is Peter Brella, and today I'm going to be introducing to you what microplastics are, where they come from, where they go, and furthermore how they directly have a negative impact on us and our environment. I was originally introduced to what microplastics are by a friend of mine who is a biochemistry major. And one of the assignments that he had a couple years ago was he had to look at different items, or rather foods, bought from the supermarket, such as fruits, vegetables, and meats, and then also fresh game meat such as bear and moose, and then look at those items directly under a microscope and then record what he saw. And what he found was, unfortunately, an alarming rate of these tiny particles of plastic on the foods that we would typically consume. And this is when I started to pay attention more to what microplastics are and becoming more educated about them. So what exactly are microplastics? Well, microplastics are defined by the National Ocean Service as tiny particles of plastic less than 5 millimeters in diameter that have a negative influence on the environment. And studies have shown, at least particularly more recently done studies, that the amount of microplastics found in the environment are becoming more and more prevalent, which is unfortunate. But where do microplastics come from? Well, microplastics are defined into two separate categories. The first being primary microplastics. And this type comes from different products such as cosmetic products and synthetic clothing. And when these items break down and go through their natural breakdown cycle, they leave behind these tiny particles of plastic that were used to make those products. And because plastic takes so much longer to break down into a non-harmful substance, it's just simply left behind to impact the environment. The second type of microplastics is secondary microplastics, and these come from the breakdown of much larger products such as plastic water bottles, plastic jugs, and plastic straws and the like. And when these items break down, they still leave behind microplastics. However, they are typically larger in size than primary microplastics. However, they are still smaller than 5 millimeters in length. Or rather in diameter, and therefore qualify to be defined as microplastics. So where do microplastics go? And what, or rather who, do they impact? Well, the most obvious answer is the ocean, of course, because everything leads toward the ocean. However, microplastics infect every body of water. That includes streams, creeks, ponds, lakes, and of course the ocean. And microplastics can directly impact the aquatic life that partakes in those ecosystems that they influence. However, microplastics can also infect drinking water. For instance, if I were to go on a walk and I needed to fill up my water bottle from a glacier-fed creek that is typically clean drinking water, that water may be impacted by a pile of garbage that I am not aware of further upstream that has been biodegrading, and therefore I would be drinking potentially microplastics. However, microplastics have also been found to influence soil, actually. If a product is not broken down and then washed away through rain or what have you, that then leads to the ocean, it can get ground into the soil and then influence the crops or the plants that grow there. However, out of all of the different places that microplastics have been found, by far the scariest for me personally is actually air. So the air can be directly impacted by microplastics that are blown away or what have you, and then inhaled by unsuspecting individuals and impact their respiratory system. But why is any of this important? Well, obviously, food contamination is a serious issue where microplastics can influence the food that is ingested by individuals. And even though we don't know the long-term effects of how microplastics affect our bodily systems necessarily, short-term effects have been recorded by studies to influence our liver. They've also been found to affect cell count as well as cancer cells found in individuals actually. And then also air contamination, which directly influences our respiratory system, which is comprised of our lungs, our heart, blood flow, and of course the brain and things of that sort. And because the respiratory system is so, not necessarily rudimentary, but crucial in all of our other bodily systems, when something is negatively impacting our respiratory system, it can have drastic effects on the rest of our body. So how can we alter the effect of microplastics? Well, obviously the most direct answer would be recycling. Recycling is a creative way of reusing items that are made of plastic or what have you, and then simply reusing those items so that they can be further used later on instead of being thrown away, put in a landfill, and then going through their natural breakdown cycle and then creating these microplastics that have such a negative, drastic effect on our environment. Use other products. Being creative about the use of products, for instance, instead of using a Ziploc for a sandwich or snacks, use a plastic container that can be reused so that instead of using a plastic Ziploc that is simply used once and then thrown away, a container can be used multiple times for food storage and snacks and things of the like. Be conscientious. So being conscientious of oneself and what kind of items they're being used and where they are then put after use can also have a positive impact on the environment. For instance, if one is walking down the sidewalk or a roadway and sees a piece of plastic on the ground, pick it up and put it where it belongs, because that would be one less item to be to float out to sea or to go through its natural breakdown cycle and then be broken up into more harmful objects. So it's simply being conscientious of oneself. To summarize, microplastics are harmful objects that are everywhere and they affect everybody. Nobody is safe from these objects. And they don't just impact us, they impact wildlife and animals everywhere. We are the greatest factor of how much we are polluting the environment. But because we are the greatest factor on how we are negatively influencing the environment, we can also be the greatest factor in how we can positively impact the environment. And the problem is getting worse, which means that it's not going to get better unless we make a serious mind change about how we can influence the environment. And everything helps. Everything that we do, being conscientious, can help how we impact the environment. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it and have a wonderful day.